Okay. I would like to call to order the May 13th, 2019 meeting of the Highland Park Board of Education. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. Linda, can we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Here.
Ms. Cimarusti?
Here.
Ms. Coleman? Ms. Gowan? Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Magaziner?
Here.
Ms. McFadden Nicola? Mr. Roslevich?
Here.
Mr. Woodward?
Here.
Be it resolved pursuant to the Sunshine Act NJSA 10-4-12 and 13, the Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in closed session to discuss litigation matters, HIB, and discipline matters. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10-4-13. Information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Can I get a motion to recess to closed session?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, can I get a motion to reconvene to public session?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, it's right over here to my right by the podium.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Linda, do we have any communications on the agenda, other than what's on the agenda? Sorry.
No, just what's on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. Yep. Michelle, one of these is for you, and one is for Ruth, for read-ins for the agenda. Okay. Alrighty. And just for a quick moment on the communications, as you can see, there's a lot about the French language program, which had actually come in between when we did the last agenda and when Dr. Taylor spoke at last Monday's meeting. But Dr. Taylor, as promised, did put up the information that he presented at last week's meeting on the front page of the district website. So if anyone is still has questions about that, you can go to the district's website and take a look at that information. Okay, item number 8, we have corrections to the minutes of the November 19th, 2018 meeting. And then item number 9, we have corrections to the minutes of the April 29th, 2019 meeting. Would somebody like to move those two items?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion about either of those? No. All right, seeing none, Linda, can we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Cimarusti?
Yes?
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Nicola?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to our student representative report. We have one student again. You guys are doing a tag team on us.
Yep, sorry about that.
No worries. You guys are busy. This is a very busy time of
Yep.
year for seniors. We totally understand.
For Irving, Irving hosted a school picnic from 9 a.m. to, Irving is hosting a school picnic from 9 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. on the 29th. And on the 31st, there is a field day. For Bartle, at Bartle, there was an NJSLA meeting for ELA and math. There is also a 5th grade math placement exam this Friday, as well as a run for fun from 2:30 to 3:30. Finally, there's a field trip to Camp Burney on the 20th for the 5th grade, and that's all for Bartle. For the middle school, there are away games for girls softball for the girls softball team from tomorrow to Friday. Next Friday, there is an early release, and school is closed on the 27th for Memorial Day. The high school has AP testing this week. Progress reports are going out tomorrow for the high school, as well as a spring band concert. Following that is an orchestra concert on this Wednesday and a choir concert next Wednesday. Junior prom is on the 23rd.
Oh my goodness. It's that downward slide to the end of the year. All right, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for Avery?
No, just the Friday before Memorial Day is closed, not early release,
Correct.
right? Okay.
All right, thank you very much. It's all yours, Dr. Taylor.
It gives me tremendous pride to have 3 special students from Irving School with us and their families. I'd like to introduce our Irving principal, Miss Megan McNally, to the podium. She's going to say a few words about these wonderful children. Miss McNally.
First, I'd like to say good evening to everybody. Thank you all for being here. And for my little ones, thank you. And to their families, thank you for bringing them. I know it's late and it's close to bedtime, but it's important that we recognize them because we have so many kids doing so many wonderful things and really just achieving. So I am going to start with Joanna. How are you? Good. Would you like to come up? You can come up. Come on. So we have some really nice words that I'd like to tell you. That you have a smile that lights up the room, and I would agree. You have demonstrated wonderful growth with your English this year while learning to read and write in Korean. That's really hard. You're doing such a good job. And you see Miss Schlesinger? I know she works really hard with you. We are so proud of her and her growing biliteracy. She is kind to her friends and gentle, always wanting to make sure that they are okay. We are excited to watch her continued growth as she moves into kindergarten and is with us all day. So congratulations, we're very proud of you. I have something special for you. Whose name is that? Who?
Joanna.
Yes, it is. Huh? Sure. Yeah, of course.
So she's in middle school?
Next up with us, Isaac, would you like to come over? Come on over. I have some wonderful things to tell you about yourself too. Ready? Good. Here, come on over. What are your favorite books? Well, I have a different one, so we're going to go with mine. Does that work? Okay. Isaac's favorite books are Mo Willems' Elephant and Piggy series. Oh, yeah. You like those? I know you do. If you aren't familiar with these books, they're about 2 friends, Piggy and an elephant, named Gerald, and they go on many adventures, and they have many struggles together, right? But in the end, what do? They work out their
Problem.
Excellent. With optimism, lots of humor, and a solution. I am so proud of the fact that Isaac can now read these books that he loves so much, and he does so with so much expression. He always reacts with a laugh that is infectious and adds to the message in the stories. Isaac has grown so much, and we are so excited for him to be a first grader and continue his love of reading. Congratulations.
You guys are so cute.
Oh, that's right. He quick got Mom's phone. The little one, yeah.
Thank you, Isaac. Last but not least, we are recognizing Asina tonight. Come on over. Are you ready to hear about how awesome you are? Excellent. So before Asina could even really communicate with us in English, we could just tell what a fun-spirited and kind child you really are. You always think of others, and you are genuinely concerned when a friend is upset or has a problem. Mrs. Schlesinger says, she is always my first student to jump at the chance to help a new English language learner with his or her transition to Irving. You have been working very hard this year on reading and writing, right? Right?
Right.
Okay, good. We are so proud of the progress that you have made, and you will be very missed as you head to Bartle in the fall. But we hope you learned a lot here at Irving. Yeah. So congratulations. I have something for you too. Congratulations, everybody. Thank you.
So at this time, the boys and girls and their families can go home if they'd like to get some sleep because we have school tomorrow, don't we? So now is your time. If you'd like to head out, I've got to set up the next part of my presentation. Thanks for coming out tonight. And thank you, Ms. McNally. That includes you too, and you too, Ms. Schlesinger. Darcy, you might just want to move. Thank you. So I actually have two more parts to my presentation tonight. One is on the agenda. The other's not. It's kind of a spontaneous add-on, which I think you'll all enjoy. Let me boot up my projector and talk a little bit about what it was like to be a high schooler for a day last week. So every year I spend a day in the shoes of a student. Last couple of years I was a 7th and 8th grader respectively, and this past year I decided to try on a 9th grader's schedule. So I took a random student's 9th grade schedule, kind of random, and I was a student all day, and I started out my day in Miss Wilson's class upstairs. Miss Wilson teaches a social studies class, and then I moved on to, oh, by the way, we were talking about imperialism at 8:30 in the morning. I'm going to get to that in a second when I talk about some of the lessons that I learned. My next class was with Miss Marr downstairs for 9th grade English. Miss Marr's using Miss Barker's room, which is across the way from her own room. Here you have some students who were working on music projects. I was a little late to the game, so I just kind of observed and pitched in where I could. They're discussing Fahrenheit 451. I think it's 451? Yeah. Thank you. I taught that a long time ago. I should remember the title. And had to develop projects. It's an authentic assessment project. Projects that reflected some of the themes that they were taking out of the book. We also studied our vocabulary by using a web-based quiz program. Then I moved on to a health class with Mrs. Shimon downstairs in our health room. Students were doing projects, making presentations about various illegal substances and talking about dependency and the effects of the substances. Then I had lunch, and by the way, the chicken patties were not so bad. The only problem I ran into is that the asparagus is buttered. So I might suggest to our food services director that they have 2 trays, one for not buttered and one for buttered. But you know, I was, despite what my own sophomore daughter tells me, I was relatively pleasantly surprised by all the options. When you go into the high, I mean, Avery, you could probably refute this, but my take on it is that you had a lot of options. I noticed, you know, you had students who went to the salad bar, you had a sandwich bar, cold cuts bar, but I opted for the chicken patty and I enjoyed it. Then I moved on to a web design class and was taught by Mr. Harper in the computer lab that he runs, and Avery is pretty well known that he has the coolest room in the whole school. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's got a lot of neat stuff going on there. I moved on then to a geometry honors class, and I finished my day in a Spanish 3 honors class. By the way, I ended up sitting next to this gentleman who is the student whose schedule I followed. So we figured it out only after we realized we had been in school together the whole day. So here's some of the lessons I learned, which is really the reason why I do this. I want to figure out what it is that we need to do for our kids that they may not think to share with us. Some reflections. I'm very grateful for the fact that we do start the high school day later for at least half of our student body. It's still difficult to, you know, be talking about imperialism so early in the morning, but then again, I'm used to the college schedule. I was able to pick up my first class at 10:30 if I chose. I also wouldn't have minded if we could start the day with something that wasn't so academic, just to get my body moving. It would also be great if there was some way, I don't think this is possible, at least in my experience, it hasn't been in my 26-year career, if we could alternate our classes so we had some academic and then some non-academic, just to shake things up. I had to switch from social studies expert to math to English, like all within the span of 3 hours. Some things that we have been talking about as a board and a leadership team, I saw illustrated during the course of the day. I was following as an honors student, and it was pretty clear that the vast majority of my classes were all with the same students. In fact, I had a meeting with my student cabinet. It's a small group I meet with of representative students from the different grades once every couple of months. I think your daughter was on the cabinet last year, Dr. Woodward. And I actually asked them about this. I said, guys, you know, I was following a schedule last week, and I kind of noticed I was with the same cohort the whole day. Is that the case with you guys? And they said, yeah, definitely. We follow the same students every day. And they were pointing out how helpful it would be if they could interact with students of different types, different abilities. Although they didn't articulate it that way, you could sense that they were interested in trying to break out of their own cliques if they could. How Mr. Lassiter can do that is a challenge I know he confronts every year, but it's something I'd like to circle back to at some point with him. So in effect, we do track our students by nature of the fact that if they're in 1 or 2 level classes, because of the small size of our program and the lack of personnel we have, you know, it's one of the disadvantages of being a small school, I believe, one of them, we have de facto tracking. So we have to think of a way to bust that up. And perhaps increasing the number of honors option classes that we're offering and doing things like we're doing at the middle school, slowly but surely, which is to integrate students with different abilities, particularly math, we can see a change in the long term. Finally, a couple other things. You know, we've been talking about the technology opportunity gap. I saw it in 2 classes. In 2 classes, teachers asked that the students pull out their mobile devices to do some really fun stuff. I mean, I had my computer, so I was able to fly with no problem. But I looked around and I noticed there definitely were a couple of students who didn't have devices, and they just didn't participate in that element of the lesson. So, and it wasn't an integral part of the lesson. It wasn't as if they didn't do that, the whole thing was going to come crashing down. But they were excluded from that part of the lesson. So I think the one-to-one initiative that the board has supported is going to go a long way to narrowing that gap. Might not solve the gap completely, but it'll narrow it. And just by the way, you, perhaps Mr. Lassiter and I need to talk about more passing time in classes. It's really hard. I had one class, I think it was Miss Wilson's class on one end of the building, and then I had an English class on the other side of the building, and it was not easy to get around. I found myself talking to students all on the way. I can't do that. You got to walk and talk if you're going to go from one place to another. I think it's like a 2-minute passing time. So that's it. Next year, I'll probably move up to the 10th or 11th grade. Probably should go to 11th grade because I don't want to keep following the same group of kids year after year. But these lessons do inform me, and I'll pay some of my lessons forward to the principals. Any questions?
I do have a question, actually. The schedule is something that I've had my eye on for a long time because I have a senior and I have a sophomore at home, but also because we've been talking about this as a board for many, many years, and how the cohorts of, independent cohorts travel together, and so a very small school becomes claustrophobic at that point. So that's just socially, but also academically, that you don't really get the mix of students that we would like to see. So tracking is more of a problem, like you said. De facto tracking makes it more of a problem than we really, I think, appreciate. So I would like to suggest that we take a look at different schedules. I don't know what the timeline is for schedules. I don't know if that can be remediated in any way, but considering there's a lot of movement going on in the guidance office, with different types of techniques and whatever, I feel like scheduling is a huge thing, and it causes a lot of residual problems. So for equity and for lots of things.
I saw it. I mean, I don't have any magic bullet answers, and I think Mr. Lassiter is scheduling right now. Obviously, I'm going to talk to him about this. I wanted to share it with all of you before I sat down with him. But
I do know that, it's a constant debate. Block scheduling, all that type of stuff. But I've heard a lot of really wonderful things about how Finland runs their schedules, and how you were talking about academic subjects and non-academic subjects. They actually do handicrafts. I could go on and on about that because I'm a knitter, but it really does give you like a social emotional break, during the day to kind of not think too much and just work with your hands. And considering, the lack of that type of thing in upcoming years with what's happening with the food science and home ec.
one could probably argue, I agree with you completely, and I felt it, but one could argue that kids are used to this and they're conditioned to it, whether it's good or bad, that they are. So for me, an adult who has a lot of freedom and autonomy with his schedule, and it was really hard for me to lock into the periods, and I was like marching from one class to another, and it was difficult. But I recognize what you're saying. It was hard to go from one academic subject to the other. I don't think I had a break until after 3 academic subjects in a row.
I mean, I am sure that you're right. They're used to it, and they're much more, what's the word? They just have the stamina of being young and running from one thing to the next. But I would guess that has something to do with the amount of anxiety that they all suffer from, making sure that they get where they need to be, being accountable. We talk a lot about getting them ready for being an adult, and you're saying as an adult, you have the opportunity and the freedom to do things differently. So are we doing the right thing, forcing them to get used to it? I don't know.
Avery, do you have any thoughts about what I just shared?
Yeah, I actually had a couple of thoughts. Just from talking to a couple teachers and a couple students, I would be slightly concerned about integrating more free time. Actually, I know it's kind of contrary to what Ms. McFadden Nicola was saying, but I don't think we as a board often realize enough the pressures that our teachers are put under to make their schedules and make their curriculums fit into a really tight 1-year period. Like, for example, I was really astounded that one of my teachers for AP US History could fit in the entire history, the second half of the United States history into just one period. And especially since our periods are a little bit shorter than most schools, and we do have a rotating schedule, so a couple times we have a class off one day. So I think we do have incorporated breaks like that, And I definitely think we should keep that the same, that we have like a break where like you can go one day, but then you break, and then like the rest of the week you have that class. But I think it is definitely a bit hard for our teachers, especially in classes like math or history that really require just like, whether it's good or bad, but a lot of memorization and a lot of material to go through, that there might not really be a lot of time in the morning or in the afternoon to do like break periods. So I guess like something to consider.
I think it would be interesting next year not to follow an honor student and instead to follow a CP student, and then weigh those two experiences. It would
Maybe an upper grade student, but in the not honors track.
Absolutely. It would be fascinating to compare those two experiences. Okay.
Agreed.
Did you want to do the other part of what you were going to do now?
So just stay there?
Okay.
Is this okay? So yeah, I have one other item that I'm throwing onto my presentation list, even though it's not on the agenda. So just this morning, Ms. Golding Cooper, our new assistant principal of the high school, was informed that Crayola released a video, an approximately 9-minute video that they did about her and how she inspired a student when she was back in the classroom setting. So I'd like to show it to the board, the community, and to encourage folks at home who want to stream it on their own devices to go to our website. It's on the front page, or to the Facebook site for the school district. So I'm just gonna.
But wait, I just want to warn everyone, like, get your tissues out, like, steel yourself, because it's a tearjerker.
All right, so let's hope that this works the way it should. Just have to put the audio up, put the audio in. I tested it. I lost my audio. Hold on. Alrighty.
I grew up the kid that didn't like attention. I'd rather be in the background. Track for me saved my life. Track gave me a space to be me. And I wasn't someone's sister or someone's daughter. I was just Sophia. So I met Keisha freshman year, one day at practice. She was like, anybody interested in doing the long jump? And kind of looked around, and I moved behind somebody that was standing next to me, and she was like, Sophia, go over there. From there blossomed our relationship.
The one thing that Sophia had that you can't teach is to be coachable. I can make you faster. I can make you stronger, but I can't make you have heart. And that is something that Sophia had that had reminded me of myself. We spent a lot of time both on and off the track. She would come by my office when I was teaching, helping PE, and kind of just talk. When I was in kindergarten, there were probably 6 Black students in that building. And what I remember is really not feeling like I fit in.
It helped having a coach who was a young Black female that I could look up to. Keisha was the only female coach on the staff. The rest were male coaches. I could also look up to her outside of track. We were talking one day, just shooting a breeze. I had graduated, and she was like, "Hey, you're interested in coaching?" Because we were talking about, you know, what the next steps are now that I've graduated. What do I see myself doing? And I really didn't have an answer at the time. She's like, "Well, do you want to like help me out and coach?"
when I left coaching, and she took the program over, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I said, no, she's gonna do it, and I want her to do it better than I did. You know, she was named Coach of the Year more times than I was. I only got it once, you know, and we cried about it together.
Being her assistant was one of the best things that could have ever happened, because I learned what it meant to be a coach and how to coach and when to push, when to hold back. I think what drives me is the desire to make sure that others are given a chance and others are seen. I was a kid who tried to hide behind somebody else because I was scared, and she'd call me out of the crowd. Had she not? So when I see kids do that now, like, that's who I'm calling on, because you're the one that I want to hear from, because you're the one that doesn't really want to talk, but I know you probably have something to say. It's almost like paying it forward. Like, someone did that for me. It is now an obligation for me to do the same for someone else.
I remember before getting into 6th grade hearing about Mrs. Nehemiah. She was the only black teacher in the building, and pretty much the only black person I saw outside of a couple of students and myself. I really felt at home in her classroom. She, whether intentionally or unintentionally, made sure I felt special. And I'm sure she picked up on the times when home wasn't always a happy place, and I felt like those were the periods of times where she pulled out the best in me. To have someone who is beautiful, intelligent, and articulate, and looks like you, it's, you know, my other favorite person during that time was Wonder Woman, right? So while Wonder Woman was, you know, a white Amazon woman, but was of strength and character, Miss Nehemiah was just a pioneer in terms of you know, my eyes. So it was like Wonder Woman and Miss Nehemiah. Like, those are my two idols. Who you are as a core is really established early on. So I know Miss Nehemiah was an integral part of the establishment of the core of who I was. If I could have a conversation with Miss Nehemiah, just let her know that there are not enough words for me to say to her to really thank her. And I'm making her proud. I continue to persevere. I continue to be proud of who I am, to be proud of being, you know, a black woman, of being Jamaican. She's my black Wonder Woman. And I'm gonna be the Wonder Woman for those students that need me. You know, kind of like how I'm able to see where Sophia is now and knowing that she's not done. I would love for Miss Nehemiah to see where I am now and that I'm not done.
First, we're just going to have you introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Sheila Armfield, but for most of my professional career, my name was Sheila Nehemiah. I taught at Washington School in West Orange, New Jersey for 41 years. 32 years ago was my first meeting of Keisha, or thereabouts. And my first impression of her was very kind, very intelligent, very helpful, always wanting to help me. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, we lost contact. I just wish that Keisha and I could have stayed closer over the years. The fact that we are now reconnecting is something that delights my heart also.
Oh my God, I love you so much. I can't believe it. How many years? Too many years.
Oh my goodness.
Oh God.
Oh my goodness.
Oh
my goodness.
So proud of you, kid. So proud of you. You don't know.
You have no idea.
This is special. This is so special.
You have no idea. I don't think you really have any idea how much you impacted me.
You're gonna make me cry and cry and cry. Oh my God, Keisha. Keisha, little Keisha.
Yes,
It's a mom.
I'm kind of
yes.
And an assistant principal.
Assistant principal.
All because of the seeds that you laid.
We should pass it on. We should pass good things on to the next generation, whether it be a career or a character trait or an attitude. It is pretty amazing to look back over 41 years of teaching and realize that I have had a big, huge impact on thousands of kids who I really regarded as my kids when they were in my class. And my students taught me many things, just as many things as I taught them.
There's a song my dad sings sometimes, and one of the lyrics goes, where would I be if not for your grace? And I think grace was extended to me, even at a young age, while on the track team, because this was the path that I was meant to take. And the vessel that was used was Keisha. Because, you know, we all have our own plans of what we're gonna do. And it just so happened that Keisha was the instrument that was used to pull my gift out of me.
Check it out. Yeah, so that's on the front page of the website and on Facebook, in case you want to stream it. Our very own Ms. Golden Cooper.
I don't know how to follow that. I feel grateful that I got to see it once before we left it in public, because it is pretty remarkable. The impact that our teachers can have on our kids, and then the way they scaffolded it to show that moving forward a second generation was just pretty, like, if you just go on the one step, it was pretty powerful, but to take it that second step was just really kind of remarkable.
And I was just thinking that she's only been here a short time, but like in that way, the teacher who inspired her has had an effect on my son.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Taylor, for sharing that, and please extend our congratulations to Keisha.
Yes, please.
I hope it gets seen far and wide, and I'm sure we'll all do our share to get it out there. All right, so with that, we are going to move on to our very dry committee reports. And Michelle, we get to start with you. So there you go. You get to
Michelle will cry through it.
turn on, spin on a dime, Michelle.
That's right. So you all want to hear about what I have to say right now. After that, goodness gracious. Okay.
Make it meaningful.
Oh, boy. All right, well, curriculum field trip requests are item number 1, and I have a change to read into the field trip form, which you can find on the drive. But the very last field trip is for Bartle School with Ms. Julie Ernst, who taught my daughter Portia. I'm a mess. And so what they're doing is they're taking the Bartle kids to the high school science fair, which I think is one of the best field trips they can do.
That is a
it's so
fantastic
great.
field trip.
Yeah. Also, I was just thinking, forget it, tangent time. They're going to be walking over to the high school. 115 students, I believe that's the entire third grade. Is that right? Third grade? Scott, is that the third grade? With
Correct.
Students? Sorry, I didn't want to assume. And 10 staff members. But the time is going to be 12:15 to 2:15. And on our sheet, it says 9:45 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So that should be changed. Otherwise, we have other students from Bartle going to the high school science fair as well, with Ms. Liddick, Ms. Fitzgerald, Ms. Branowitz, Ms. Mayo, Ms. Belber, Ms. Stratodakis, Ms. McLean, and Ms. Freesia. And fifth grade orientation as well from Bartle School for those students going to the middle school. And the rest are high school and Irving trips. And those are end of the year type things, picnics and such. Moving on, number 2 is the approval of the HIV incident report for the month of March 2019, letters A through J. And number 3 is the approval of a high school course for next year, 2019-2020 school year. That sounds really weird, I'm sorry. For Mandarin Heritage. And as I said in last week's report, that we are still discussing different ways to list out the units that we'll be studying in that class. So we're working on that.
Correct.
Number 4 is the approval of the needs assessment and comprehensive equity plan for 2019-2022, which you'll also hear, I believe, in the equity and excellence report. But this is the first step to implement or to recommend the affirmative action officer to develop a needs assessment and a comprehensive equity plan to implement over the 3-year period of time that I mentioned, and to submit an annual statement of assurance of its implementation and progress. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. I do want to just add that for number 2, we're approving the HIB report with the changes that we discussed in executive session to, I think it was 18-1906 and 18-1907.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have any questions for Michelle right now? No? Scott, we did get one, the board did get one email pertaining to the Mandarin Heritage class. Could you just talk a tiny bit about what led to the creation of that course? And
we do provide what we used to call a native speaker class. We now call a heritage class for all of our languages. And so now that we have students moving into the high school for Mandarin, we have to incorporate a heritage course naturally to follow them. The heritage course is taught in the same class as the leveled class with which other students are taking Mandarin. So if a student needs a level 3 Mandarin heritage, the student will take the course with other level 3, basic level 3 students. So Ms. Chang will differentiate instruction according to the program that she's going to create over the summer. The curriculum guide will be written over the summer with Ms. Fittipaldi.
Okay. So that's just based on, so we have those classes for Spanish and Mandarin because we teach
Correct.
Spanish and Mandarin.
Correct. Oh, we have them at the middle school as well, and the high school. So every level has to have its own heritage course.
Gotcha. Did we have that for French or?
I don't
no,
believe we have a
because
French heritage course. It's something which we should create before the French program begins to move out. We've been doing it only in the last couple of years since Rebecca Fittipaldi came on board because we were lacking in doing that.
So it's a state requirement to have that, I'm assuming?
I don't believe it's a state requirement. I can look that up and follow up with the board. But it's definitely something that we need to commit to because we have students who are native speakers who might want to take the class for other reasons. Learn more about their cultural heritage, history, geopolitics connected to their culture.
I mean, because I was just wondering if it's based on, because obviously we have a significant percentage of Spanish-speaking students, we have a significant percentage of Mandarin-speaking students, if it's,
but we don't have
some
significant
requirements. Right, yeah, clearly we don't have that same number of French-speaking students, but I'm just wondering if it's a requirement based on that, or if this is just best practice.
I'll do some research and follow up. It's a great question. And I'll email the curriculum committee and the board.
I have actually what you gave me. I don't know if you'd like me to read it, the course description.
Okay.
It's pretty short. It's Mandarin Heritage for 9th to 12th grade is a need for students who have intermediate speaking and listening proficiency, but lack of pinyin knowledge, reading and writing communicative skills in Chinese Mandarin. So, it's the kind of thing that would address students who grow up speaking at home, but do not necessarily read from texts or learn grammar and character formation. For Heritage course students, the curriculum will be focused on reading with pinyin to reading without pinyin, writing life experience and reflections on news, articles, and classical Chinese and modern literatures. Heritage course will also learn to appreciate Chinese cultural ancestral heritage, and the Heritage course will also contribute to the community with the students who learn Chinese as a second language for providing perspectives in learning Chinese. And we were told when we were first discussing this in the curriculum committee that we would be using authentic texts to teach from. So there's no textbook, which I think is wonderful. It's how I studied a lot of different things in my comparative literature major at Rutgers. You read the original actual text, and then you're able to translate into other languages, or you're able to understand different cultural differences that are inherent in the text. So I think that it sounds like a really great course. And last time I read out the course outline, but we had also talked about adding Chinese history and geopolitical issues of present-day China in the context of the international.
Just a quick scan of the New Jersey World Language Standards site and requirements site does not indicate that it's a requirement that you have a heritage speaking program. I'll do some more research and I'll reach out to my contact, but it doesn't look initially like it's a compliance need.
Okay. And it's not, I'm sorry, and it's not an additional class for her to teach. It's rolled into her existing classes. So it's not like she takes on another section or something. These are students.
Correct.
Who
It'll
would
be
in
the
those.
same section with the other kids
Right,
that
so
she's
it's not
teaching.
an additional course. It's just to be able to accommodate students who are heritage speakers.
Correct. It's almost like a reverse dual immersion course. You have a minority of the heritage speakers in this class situation setting.
Two quick ones. In terms of how we have our other classes named, would it be more appropriate to call this Mandarin for native speakers in line with the Spanish for native
So I
speakers?
think it was politically incorrect to refer to the class as being natives speakers, which is why we shifted to the term heritage.
So should then the Spanish classes be renamed Spanish Heritage?
They're also heritage classes.
Oh, okay.
If you go to our program.
On the last class list that we received back in March, it was still listed as for
Native speakers. Our most recent program, our most recent new program request form, approval forms have all listed heritage.
Okay.
I'm going to double check Genesys.
And then when we
Got me curious.
When we had this class for the middle school, like one of the lines in there was that we needed to hire an additional teacher for the Mandarin Heritage class at the middle school. That never happened?
Not currently.
We didn't have to hire someone else.
Not as a result of the heritage program.
Okay.
Okay, if there isn't anything else on curriculum, we'll move on to finance facilities with Mark.
Yes, thank you, Darcy. Okay, so we went over many of these last week, but items 1 through, let's see, 1 through 8 are bill lists, treasurer's report, board secretary report, going back into February, certifications that number 7, that no major account or fund has been expended. Item 8 is the budget transfers. Item 9 is the travel and related expense reimbursement reports. Item 10 is approval of contractors for professional services. We do have an addition there for Camp Bernie nurse from, I guess, a service called Bayada Home Care Aids. Item 11, again, we did this last week, but I'll go over it again. The proposal for roof repairs at the middle school. And in item number 12, we're going to move to approve the lesser amount, which would be a repair from this year's budget of $4,600. Items 13 and 14 are coupled in the same way. Item 13 is a proposal for roof repairs at the high school, and we're going to choose obviously the least expensive, which is the $38,800 repair from Northeast Roof Maintenance. And that'll come from the fiscal year 2019-2020 capital expenditures from our capital accounts budget. Item 15 is new, and it's a recommendation to accept the Highland Park Education Foundation grant for $20,000. For the middle school, the grantee is Christina Nicosia, and the project is the Fuse Studio project. And as always, I read many of these in from the Highland Park Education Foundation. Thanks to that group for raising this money and for funding special and wonderful programs at our schools. Item 16 is very similar. It's a George Street Playhouse memorandum with our public schools, and that is the district support for the George Street Playhouse application for a grant of $25,000 from Provident Bank Foundation to develop and implement creative dramatics theater arts integration program at Irving School to improve academic and social emotional development of K-1 students. So this is wonderful, $25,000 coming into the district, and especially coming in from a local group, George Street Playhouse, which we've had the relationship with before. Item 17 is a renewal contract for dental benefits with Delta Dental, and that item is with no increase. So we're actually getting an insurance policy with a 0% increase in premium rates. Item 18 is a contract renewal with Computer Solutions, Inc. for budgetary accounting and payroll software system and support coverage for $12,372 for the 2019-20 school year. It's a 1.28% increase, and we will receive a discount of 2%. So that's also will not be increasing, tiny decrease. Item number 19 is approval of our tuition rates. This is when students from other districts use our school facilities. The one change to this, should I just read it in and we'll vote? So the last item, preschool disabled full-time, is a program we will not be having. So we're going to strike that from this motion. So it'll be from pre-K half-day down through preschool disabled part-time. And I do want everyone to note that the new therapeutic support program, which we haven't had this year, with the assistance of Rutgers University, we'll have some open slots, or hopefully we'll have one or two open slots, and we will charge those out to other districts who have students they want to send to us at the rate of $50,000 per year. So hopefully we can make up some of the money we desperately need in our budgets with that. Item 20 is the renewal of our grant application for the student-based, school-based youth services program. This is grant money, the tune of $277,587, and this funds the high school's teen center. So this is an application we make every year. And then the last item is the approval of a contract to upgrade our door access control and video security systems. This is a contract with Open Systems Integrators of Hamilton, New Jersey, to upgrade existing door access control and video security systems throughout the district. The cost is $149,458. This is again in the 2019-20 budget. and again is from capital expenditures. So, Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is going through a co-op contract, so we're not going out to bid on it.
That's correct.
Good. Okay, and so that's the full Finance Committee report. And we did not meet before the meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Does anybody have any questions on any of those items?
Do we have the behaviorally, what are you calling it, therapeutic support program? Did we formally approve that at all? Is that going to be on the agenda?
Can you repeat that question, Ruth?
The therapeutic support program? That hasn't been on the agenda yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working on that now that we've got the green light last board meeting.
Okay.
Although we did budget it. We budgeted for it.
Okay.
So if somehow that falls through, some money is going to have to be moved around to not pay Rutgers and to send some students who are bringing back into the district with that to continue to send them out of district, which, hopefully that won't happen.
No, that next step will be to put it under approval of contractors for professional services.
Great.
Scott, with the FUSE program that's being funded by the grant from the foundation, so when Christina comes in next, I don't know when that, do we know when that's coming soon?
I'll tell you right now.
Next meeting to talk about one-to-one.
But maybe she can spend 2 minutes and fill us all in on that, because that's a very cool program.
Yeah, it is. It's basically pushing up the program to the middle school. Yeah, the next meeting for us will be on 21st, coming up Tuesday, so we'll be thanking them personally for that.
And then 21, the request for the upgrades for the door access controls and security, where did that come from initially? Just like, where did we assess the need that we needed to upgrade the
scope of the work that we need to do? Essentially all of our locks, correct me if I'm wrong here, we're talking about the broader district program, need to be replaced.
They're outdated, and the systems, any replacements are not compatible with the controls that we have. Okay, because they're so outdated.
So outdated.
Yeah. And the same with the cameras.
And for number 21 with the door access control and video security systems, does this include the cameras outside the school too? Because okay.
If you're going to do it, right? So it'll cover all 4 buildings. Okay. Any other questions for Mark, Finance Facilities? Okay, we will move on to personnel. Ruth, you get that honor tonight since Ann is not here this evening.
The longest part of it. Okay, you ready? Here we go.
This is a busy time for personnel.
Well, but remember, most of this was
We went through
gone
it.
over,
There's
so
the-
really you're only
Okay.
needing to highlight anything that's in bold that wasn't discussed. at
Got
the
it,
last
okay.
meeting.
In number 1, the approval of the reduction in force, there was added 1 part-time English teacher to the elimination of 1 elementary teacher. So there's 2 actual RIFs. Number 3 is an approval of a legal settlement. 7, we have a resignation of one of our school psychologists. 8 and 9 are both resignations of paraprofessionals. 12 is a non-renewal. 13 is an extension of a medical leave, while 14 is the approval of an initial medical leave, as well as 15. 16, we have the approval of the music teacher, full-time at Bartle School. And then 17, our new reading interventionist teacher at the Irving School. 18, a new paraprofessional at Bartle. And 19, summer registration support. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, then in the approval of the tenured staff, which is number 29, there was a mistake in a salary. So a step was added, and that salary is now amended to, there's a couple of salary amendments, okay. So to the tenured professional staff, there are 2 changes. Nope, 1, 2, 4 changes to salary there. And then let's see, nope, even more.
Looks like 8 altogether.
Yeah, there's a bunch, okay. There's a bunch of amendments to salaries in there, in number 29. 30 is fine, 31, non-tenured 12-month staff.
Excuse me, Ms. Byer, there's a correction that you need to read in.
So I need to read that in, that's on 29?
It's number 29.
Okay. The other ones were already corrected?
Yes.
This is, okay, got it, okay. So under Jennifer Mayo at the Bartle School, the salary as stated here is 64, I can't read it, and then the amended salary is 67,145. That's the corrected salary. Okay, thank you. Then we move on to 33. Mrs. Golden Cooper was in the last agenda as a 12-month administrator, and she's actually a 10-month administrator, so that's a change there. Dee Dee Deacher in 34 is a tenured 10-month administrator. I think she was under non-tenured in the last agenda. And then we have, let's see, we have all of these. We have the paraprofessional changes here, a couple moving just buildings, I think. Looks like highlighted building changes. 42, we have new social work interns for our teen center, and who are getting stipends. And then we have our own Mrs. Luxa, who is getting approved to do her her internship through our teen center for her social work degree, I believe, right? So MSW. So that's in 42. And then we have our before and after school program staff approvals and salaries. I guess we didn't have those in the last agenda. 44, our summer holistic intervention program teachers. 45, our coordinators for that program. 46, a Title I kindergarten transition teacher for the summer. Okay, Christine Gappa. And then 47, Title III summer ESL teachers. This is all summer. 48, summer holistic intervention program Title I enrichment teachers. 49, Title I and Title III summer program substitutes. 50, middle school Title I math enrichment program teacher. We had a lot of stuff going on during the summer here. All right, 51, Title I reallocation grant teacher. Is that the summer as well? To attend program meetings from May to June. Okay. 52, a volunteer coach for baseball at the middle school. Thank you to all of our volunteer coaches. We appreciate it. 53, approval of the extended school year staff. So we have quite a list there for our ESY program for the summer. 54, our child study team crew there for their hours that they put in during the summer for IEPs and testing. And then 55, our summer ESL screening employees. 56, summer 2019 nursing work. 57, approval for a paraprofessional to cover the middle school breakfast duties. And that is it. Okay.
We're trying to separate the next round. Will be,
Yeah.
The next round will probably have a lot of Schedule B appointments on the
coaching
agenda and new hires.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions for Ruth or Scott on any of the
Yes,
personalities?
number 50, the middle school Title I math enrichment program teacher. I'm just curious to know whether that is for students who need help over the summer, or if it's students who are looking to be pushed ahead over the summer.
That's a great question. It's actually for the former, for students who need help.
Okay.
We're trying to shift the way we think about that program and make sure that we identify those kids we're talking about, not try to necessarily encourage kids to get a leg up and take slots
Okay.
for the other
much
students.
more comfortable with with that approach. Thank you.
We, just, Rob, so you know, we talked about that at the curriculum meeting on March 6th. And there's some notes available. I don't know if you want me to go through any of these, but it's math support, not enrichment. It is not to get into algebra or to get ahead. Students can waive into any math class, and they must have a good foundation. So this would give them the good foundation to be able to waive in, and they're encouraged to waive in if they feel that they can do the work, and this course is offered so that they can get that good foundation. Also, there's an identification process currently going on where students can have the opportunity to get into the class with encouragement. And apparently it's in the works. I haven't heard it yet, but there's a Honeywell and an email blitz to advertise coming.
Correct. And we're going to be meeting with the kids themselves as well.
Yes.
Okay. Question. I just have another question about that. Now, because it's Title I funding being used for that, wouldn't it be required that this program serves students who have needs, or no?
The middle school is a all Title I district?
Yeah. Oh, so.
Or not school.
The school.
Yeah.
But this,
Joyce
I
is
mean,
correct.
this was an issue that we took talk about.
Right, we did
last
talk
year.
about that. Yeah, I was just thinking about the actual funding regulations around what students can actually take advantage then of that type of program.
Yep.
So I don't know what the identification process is, but
Right,
I'd
if
like
we
to
were
hear
using Title
more.
I's funds for a program just to move kids ahead, that
That's
would
the
still
problem.
be wrong, right?
That-
So,
Right.
you know, like, I think we would all wave a flag on that one. But
And we
since
did.
this is, right, so yeah, so since this is Title I funds used to try to
lift
help
up,
boost
yeah.
student achievement, that's.
Right, so I mean, I don't know if there's more to tell about the identification process, but I would certainly want to hear more about that if it's available.
I'll follow up with the curriculum committee in a couple of weeks and have that for you.
That'd be great,
We
thank
haven't
you.
had that conversation just yet.
No, but it definitely was part of our conversation on March 6th.
I'll give you an update.
Small part.
Yep.
but yeah.
Which then you can report out to the full board at the next June 3rd meeting.
Great, thank you.
All right, anybody have anything else for Michelle?
Oh, no,
Or for
for
Ruth, sorry? Yeah. Oh, I thought we switched to curriculum there for a minute. I
It
got
sounded like
confused.
we did, but we didn't, I'm
Like,
sorry.
all
intertwined.
Right. And I just wanted to say, as we move forward with conversations about math and how we're changing our approach, I'm really excited to have Chris with us since this is his area. He's actually a math professor, so.
Nobody's an expert on it. Nobody's an expert on such a big issue.
There you go. But we do look forward to your input on these matters as we go forward. So we're very glad to have you for multiple reasons. Okay, so if no one else has anything for Ruth on personnel, we'll move on to policies with Mark.
Again, thank you. We are meeting tomorrow evening at Dr. Taylor's office at 5:30, and we have a long list of policies to continue to review through. There have been a few that have been very important and somewhat complex. One of those we did a second reading over the last 2 months, which was the suicide prevention and suicide policy. And so we spent a lot of time on that. And then the next three that seem to be very important, and we've had a lot of discussions at the board table about in public and also in private session in discipline, have been around attendance, late arrival and early dismissal, which mostly is about late arrival, to be honest. And then the use of physical restraint, which is a policy that we have notes going back about 5 or 6 years. Ruth, you had brought some ideas to the policy committee before my time on the board, and we reviewed the policy that you put forward, the existing policy, also some policies that are sample policies from the different organizations that do policies, and we tried to come up with something that made sense. So I'll be moving for first reading in a few moments the policy on attendance, policy on late arrival and early dismissal, and use of physical restraint. Just a few words on each of these. For the attendance policy and the late arrival, early dismissal policy, these are policies where the board sets the goals or the policy for the administration to implement. So that does not mean that the board says, if a student is 15 minutes late, these are the exact actions you'll take. It's a guideline to the kinds of institution or the kind of organization we have in place to deal with the lateness or the poor attendance, so that the administration can themselves make the guidelines or the rules. So those took a lot of thought to try to bifurcate the issue of setting the policy versus setting the exact action that's taken at the school level. And you'll see that in some of the new wording in these policies. In the case of use of physical restraint, that's more detailed, but in that case we wanted to take, I think the correct words are the least restrictive action. There's a lot of different actions you can take when a student is having a serious problem and is a danger to themselves or a danger to others in terms of restraining them. But I think you want to take, at least the policy committee felt, that we want to take the policy that restrains the student as few times as possible and with the least amount of restraint required so that no one is injured. And it goes all over the map, so we had to kind of focus in on that. So that policy used, I think, much of what Ruth had come forward with, which had to do with a great deal of care and not so much physical force. So you'll see that represented in the policy. So that's really what I have to say on that. In the policy for second reading is the organizational chart that we passed for first reading last time. So I just welcome any comments or any suggestions or any changes we could make to make them better.
Could I make a comment?
Yeah, of course.
Or do you want? Okay. So I was wondering if this addresses, and I know we talked about this maybe a couple months ago, where we talked about the issue of a student that comes like 5 minutes late being treated the same as a student that comes like an hour or two late. If we're leaving it up to the schools to decide the policy of lateness, how can we ensure that these two students aren't going to be treated the same, and that 5 minutes late isn't going to be kind of ruining a student's attendance?
We spent hours talking about that issue. I mean, literally hours. And I think it became apparent to the members of the committee that the board can recommend to not recommend, but have a policy which demands that the superintendent and the administrators have a reasonable execution of the policy, but that the policy doesn't try to distinguish between 5 minutes and 1 hour. And we believe that the administration should make those decisions, such that if a superintendent or an administrator has a policy which is either ridiculous or isn't the wishes of the board, so that they are treated the same, or they're treated, and I would say badly, that administrator is the person who's responsible and is to be taken to task by the board. But we didn't think that a board should put those kinds of numbers into writing in a policy. And we wouldn't know what to do. I mean, we would know what we think we should do, but that might be the wrong thing to do. We're not on the ground in the high school. I mean, we toured the high school a few days ago, and it was kind of eye-opening. I mean, it was wonderful, but it was kind of eye-opening for us, for many of us, I felt that way, to see what goes on, how it runs, what some of the internal mechanisms are, and how the place works. And we didn't feel that we're enough experts on how the place works to set those kinds of numbers in place, other than to say to the superintendent, and there are words in here that particularly in the lateness, let me bring that up though to give you an example of what we did put in, if it would come up here on my computer. Internet is fighting me. Do you have it up? Oh, it came back. I got it. Thank you. I think I have it. Yeah. So we added the nomenclature that individual school protocols on lateness that are proposed by principals will be instituted by consultation and approval of superintendent and other district employees, and who hold psychological and biological expertise to inform all parties of best practice. That's the best we could do. We did not want to put minutes and timing and so on into a policy.
I can tell Avery that Mr. Lassiter, Ms. Golden Cooper, and I, and Ms. Middleton have had conversations, several, around the same time the Board Policy Committee was looking at this document, about how to see there to be different degrees of being late, right? The intent of the late policy internally is to be sure that we are documenting how much instructional time students are losing, and then consider whether a student has lost credit because he or she just missed out on too much. But frankly, and Mr. Lassiter, I'm comfortable saying, and Ms. Golden Cooper and Ms. Milton agree with me, frankly, a student who's late 2 minutes to a class is likely not missing much instructional time. You know and I know it takes a few minutes just to start a class up. So we're trying to figure out how, and we're going to try to do this over the summer leading into the fall, how to track in a systematic way the difference between a student who's late a few minutes and a student who's late 5 minutes. We think we might be able to do something in Genesis, you know, when you check into turnstile, that actually sends routes a late entry one way versus another depending on how many minutes the student's late.
And the board expects a presentation on this because it's been such a hot button issue come the fall. I'd certainly, and I believe the policy committee would like to hear how we're dealing with that situation. I think all of us have had personal experiences with this, not necessarily ourselves, but our own children, and I think it's very important that we solve the problem. But I don't think I'm sorry if I sound defensive, but I don't think the board can solve this by putting times and so on, and we need to make a policy for the administration to follow.
Right. And this is an issue that's come up multiple times over the years, and we've already made, these kind of like tremendous strides in terms of how the district deals with this issue. I mean, it was not long ago, when Dr. Taylor first came on board, that letters were still kind of automatically going out once you hit so many lates, and I don't think it was ever looked at whether that was 2 minutes or 20 minutes or 2 hours, that, if you had X amount, we were calling law enforcement and we were going to be dragging you into court. So exactly. So we've already done some serious backpedaling, and now we're really looking at how to refine this to make it the most reasonable for our students, where they know the expectation is that you're here and you're here on time, but we're not going overboard if someone's a couple minutes late to class. So it's a balancing act.
It's really difficult too, because we're, I think, swimming against the stream in a lot of different ways. We decided as a policy committee to talk about like psychological and biological issues that might be impacting students of this age. It's brought up in lots of different areas, but we have a presidential candidate who was talking about that same thing of bringing people into court and sending scary letterhead home because of issues of lateness. So it's pretty cool that we've made as much progress as we have, and student input is always welcome.
And I did want to add one thing that the board did, I think probably soon after I joined a few years ago, which is we did move the period 1 start time to be much later, and probably as late as any district in the county. And the other district that we know about, which is Metuchen, which did the same thing, they also have the period, I think you call it period A, which is the period for choir practice, music practice, teen pep. Let's call that not academic necessary credit courses. And I think that number of students that Mr. Lassiter gave us that are coming in earlier than period 1 is varied between about a third and 45%, so that there is a good opportunity for many students to sleep a little later, and which is definitely more healthy. And so, as a late riser myself, I sympathize, and I think it's a good thing.
Is the late arrival and early, is this policy the one that addresses whether a senior can be prevented from graduating, or is there a separate policy on that?
Didn't come up in our discussion, Ed. I don't believe there's a policy that speaks to that specifically.
Yeah, I don't think it's in a policy.
Not in a policy?
No, I think you can lose credit.
That should be noted.
Yeah, there's a credit recovery process that might talk about that. I don't know if it refers to a specific policy, but there's a certain mandate that the state gives us for amount of hours that students need to be present for credit to be given. So I think that might be a policy, but it might be a state policy, not necessarily a district policy.
But the high school has a policy where if you accrue a certain number of lates, then you have to go for academic recovery or you have to do something else, because my son does have an A-period academic course where it's tough for him to get there in the morning, and it's his own fault. But he's got a number of lates, and now he's been talking to Keisha about how do I make that up? You know, I get there late, and basically when I do get there on time, it's someone else tuning their violin. But if I get there 2 or 3 minutes late, then it goes against my credit towards that class for orchestra.
Is 8-period 7:48 or is it 7?
It's like 7:48
something.
It's like, yeah, I thought it was
Period A.
7:48, and
Right.
the period 1 is like 8:40 or 8:45.
8:40.
8:40, yeah.
I can tell you that.
But again, I'm not trying to sound too defensive, but I was told that by Mr. Lassiter that all of the academic classes in period A could also be taken during the periods 1 through whatever during the day, for exactly that reason, you know, so that, and then I don't know what his schedule is. My daughter had the same problem. She was told 2 weeks before graduation, she was already packed for college. She was told, you're not graduating, and you know, with very fine grades, and you know, going to a good college. You're not graduating, you were late 14 times this year or 12 times or whatever. And it was, for our family, a horrible experience. So I sympathize. You know, we had to appear, she had to appear, and I think the policies have gotten better, not worse. Those policies were horrible.
Okay. If we don't have anything else on policy.
Oh, I had 2 questions. One, on the 5200, I think we talked about the last paragraph, and that talks about whether or not the district, if we do have a certain number of absences or attendance issues, whether or not we do whether or not the superintendent would then have to put together a plan, whether or not we can actually strike that paragraph. Has that determination been made?
Yeah, I asked Scott about that at the last meeting.
At the last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you asked the question at the last meeting, but I didn't know a determination.
It's not a legal requirement.
It's not a legal requirement, okay. And then the second paragraph, it says about the Board of Education defining what exactly an unexcused absence is. I don't think we've ever done that. I know there's certain things that, you know, if you come in with a doctor's note or you have a bereavement or you're going to visit a college, but, you know, it's like if I go to visit a college with my son and take my daughter with me for middle school, then that's an unexcused absence for her, an excused absence for my son, you know, but technically I believe that it's up to us to define what's an excused and unexcused absence.
Well, that sounds like it'll be a fun meeting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this tomorrow.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
The Department of Education just distributed an updated clarification of chronic absenteeism, and they echoed the 2015 stipulation that it is up to the districts to determine unexcused absences for internal use. However, when reporting out to the state, there are, I think, 4 or 5 specific definitions of an unexcused absence. The difference, by the way, being when we see the NJDOE report cards point out chronic absenteeism numbers, those are the numbers we report to the state based on their definition.
Yeah.
Loss of credit, that's up to us. And so, yes, there is some flexibility when it comes on excused absences. Right now, our websites say something different than our student handbook, say something different than our regulation. There's actually a regulation that the policy committee can look at tomorrow. So we do have to rectify that.
So then if you're saying this paragraph really just speaks to just the regulation, not our sort of internal definition?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's where the board would set that is in
Yep.
the regulation. So if that's already in regulation, then you guys are.
It's in our
looking at-
regulation.
Okay,
it's a-
Yeah,
so
that-
you guys are going to have to look at that.
Yeah, we are. When we rarely do that, regulation for the community's sake is much more specific than policy, and boards do have to adopt both regulation and policy.
It's the same idea as a law and a regulation, right?
Yeah.
The state implements or the legislature implements a law, and then the individual department has to then create the regulations.
I think we're a little behind, though, when Strauss Esme gives us updates on regulation as well as policy, so we should probably take a look at 5200, the reg.
And I just also want to reiterate for Mark and the rest of the policy committee, always feel free when there's a big backup to shuffle stuff out to individual committees. You know, I mean, finance could be looking at finance, ones pertaining to finance, personnel to
that for a
personnel.
little while.
Yeah, you know, so, you know, the policy committee doesn't always have to take on all those tasks onto themselves. You can farm some of those out to
Right.
committees for them to look at in their committee meetings as well.
It was very, very easy to go through, like the finance ones, when Ann assigned me them. It was very easy to go through the ones that had no meat to them, you know, there was no controversy.
Right.
Where there were 10 words changed or whatever. But when it gets to these, which we've tried to pick off the tough ones, it's really hard, and it's hard to farm them out. But I'll look at them with, Scott goes through them as well. We'll look at them and see if we could do that. That's a great idea.
Okay, yeah, I just don't want to, you know.
I know.
Overburden you guys. Okay, so if there's nothing else on policy, we'll move on to equity and excellence with Monique.
I have nothing new to report since last week. We'll be meeting in June to continue talking about the memorandum of agreement between law enforcement and education officials.
Feels like every time you mention that, there should be like a dun, dun, dun.
Right.
'Cause it's just like this big buildup.
Yes.
Okay, well, we appreciate you guys tackling that. Okay, let's see, so where are we? Okay, so now we're at public comment. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation. If anyone would like to make public comment, you can come up to the podium. There should be a sign-in sheet there. Please put your name. Uh-oh, or maybe you can't because Linda didn't put a pen. She has her own pen. She's prepared.
Denise Mayfire, Wayne Street. I debated whether or not to send this in an email or not, but I just recently got more information. Anyway, I got a phone call almost, it was probably close to a month, 3 weeks to a month ago, from Mr. Lassiter about an incident that had happened in Ms. Chirco's room, I believe, in the high school. Apparently $800 had been stolen of DECA money. Mr. Lassiter had called me because my son was in a room where some names came up.
So, I'm sorry, Denise, are you talking about like
like physically?
This wasn't like a thing that went out to the whole district. This was a
This
specific,
was a
I'm
thing.
just clarifying that.
Yeah, no. This is a very specific incident. And, you know, he wanted to know if my son knew who the person was. My daughter is in DECA, and she told me that $800 had been stolen, apparently out of Ms. Chirco's or Ms. Harper's, I'm not sure of the detail, but one of their purses while it was in the classroom. And I guess I have found out who the perpetrators were. I guess I'm just wondering what happened, and I understand the police were never called and the students involved with this were never arrested or anything like that. And I find that very disconcerting that somebody could take that much money from kids who earned that money, steal it from their peers, And I believe there are 2 co-conspirators involved with the main perpetrator in terms of the person who took the $800 gave $50 to these other 2 students. And I guess the more I think about it, the more I'm quite upset by this, and I want to know what happened. I want to know that these students were prosecuted for this theft from somebody's purse, which seems really, that's a fair amount of money. If they were adults, that's minimally a misdemeanor that can get you punishable up to by a year in jail. Presuming they're juveniles, it'll go to juvenile court, or they'll get diverted, that's fine. But it seems to me that case should be prosecuted. And I guess I want to know whether it was, and I recognize you might not know. And if it wasn't, I also want to know that, if it was, that's cool. If it wasn't, that's not cool, and I want to know why it wasn't.
I'm not familiar with the incident. Have you asked Mr. Lassiter for a follow-up?
No, I have not asked Mr. Lassiter about this. I'm hearing all kinds of crazy rumors, but I do know for a fact that the $800 was stolen. I do know for a fact that some people know who the perpetrator is, and that $800 were stolen.
Well, it's my recommendation that you reach out to Mr. Lassiter, since he's the one who initiated the call first.
Well, that's almost separate. That's like incidental that my one kid got called about something that actually affected my other kid more substantially, who, it's just, I find it very disturbing that this money was stolen right out of a teacher's, or Miss Harper, who, she's a staff person, out of staff's purses. I find that very, very disturbing. And if, in fact, the person, they know who the perpetrator is and nothing was done about it, that's also very disturbing to me as not only as a parent, but as a citizen. I believe that the person should be prosecuted as well as the person's co-conspirators.
Scott, can you have Mike follow up with Denise?
Yes, I'll have him call you. How's that?
Great.
All righty.
Great. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Is there any other public comment? Okay, if not, we're going to move on to our board action items. Michelle, could you move the curriculum and instruction items, please?
Sure. I would like to move items 1 through 4 with the aforementioned changes on items B and C in the HIB incident report. And, yep, that's it.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I'm only just concerned on number 3 that we have a draft of the curriculum, but we don't actually have an actual curriculum written out to vote on.
This is the first step in that process. In the previous 4 years I've been here, we've always first had you approve the course before we actually make the next step and write the curriculum guide.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise you'd incur the expense of writing the curriculum and then have the board not approve it, which
Right,
wouldn't make
yeah.
much sense.
We haven't received a draft. I just wanted to make that clear. There's no draft.
Right.
Okay. And the course won't be run until we do approve the curriculum, so it's kind of... Anything else? No. Okay.
Is there enough interest within the people taking Mandarin or people who might take Mandarin next year in this heritage course, or is it
we have lots of courses that we have curriculum for, that we offer, that there's lots of interest. Then maybe next year there's not a lot of interest. Courses come and go, ebb and flow. We won't know until we offer it. Anything else? No? Okay, Linda, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Simoresti?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
So, yes for 1, 2, and 4, and no to 3.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
No on 3, yes to the remainder.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Okay, Mark, could you move the finance and facilities items, please?
Yes, I'm going to move items 1 through 21. And again, a reminder that number 19 has the last line deleted, preschool disabled full-time, which isn't part of our program. So again, moving items 1 through 21.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on those items? No? Seeing none, Linda, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Simoresti?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Yes.
Mr. Wislevich?
No on 21, yes on the remainder. I'm sorry, abstain on 21. Abstain, sorry. And yes on the remainder.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Ruth, could you move the personnel items, please?
Yes, okay, I am moving
Scroll,
1
Ruth,
through
scroll.
57, with a reminder that in 29, there is that salary correction to 67,145.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one question about, so number 9 says that Mr. Knight is resigning, but number 26 says that he's being moved from middle school to Irving School. Which one is happening, or?
It's just a temporary move.
Okay, anything else? Good catch, though.
Yes.
Zayu, you're paying attention.
That's true.
Okay, if there isn't any other discussion, Linda, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Simoresti?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
I have to abstain from 19
Yes, you do.
and also from 38. And yes for the remainder.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
With great regret, especially for item number 2, yes.
You are approving item number 2.
I'm approving all of them, I'm just expressing regret.
Okay. Mr. Wislevich?
Abstain from 10, 11, and 12. And no on 1, 2, 32, 33, and 34. And yes on the remainder.
Mr. Woodward?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so Mark, could you please move the policies for us?
Yes, I'm going to move policies numbers 1 and number 2.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on any of those? No? Okay, seeing none, Linda, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Simoresti?
Yes?
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Yes.
Mr. Wislevich?
No on number 2, yes on number 1.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Okay, we don't have any equity and excellence items to move, so that brings us to our board liaison reports. You're jumping on your mic. You have anything from us for Ms. Yang?
We did not have a Municipal Alliance Committee meeting.
Okay. Mark, I'm assuming you're...
Same for me.
Same from you?
Haven't had a call.
Okay. Rob, do you have an update for us on the Ed Foundation? Or
Well,
how their event
yeah,
went over
they
the
had a-
weekend?
they
I
had
know
a
Monique
terrific
went,
event.
and apparently you came home a big winner.
Yes, I saw that. Are we sharing?
It was crazy. My first time playing poker ever was at the
Nice.
Highland Park Ed Foundation.
It'll be the start of something
You sit
big.
next to me, that's why.
So that was Saturday night. The next meeting is not this week, but next.
On the 21st.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And it was
anything
excellent.
you
I
want
mean,
to
well, just to
tell us
say-
about the event?
So this is I went last year to the event at the high school, and completely different vibe. It was great because we had Donnell Morgan give her talk, and then we moved to the high school auditorium for band, and then Saturday night, casino night. So it was just a nice variety of offerings, I think, and it was a very festive, happy crowd there, and you're supporting the kids in schools, so you can't beat it. And for me, I learned to play poker. And I did pretty good, cleaned up, as I call it. So
hilarious.
yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, it was fun. And then there was this one guy that kind of trickled in. He said he was from the community. He just heard about it somewhere, and he joined the party and, you know, supported our school. So it was great. And he took home a nice luxury bag for his mom for Mother's Day. He won as
Nice.
one of the raffles. So yes,
Great.
it's very
Well,
very
thank
good
you
night.
for going, Monique.
They do really great work. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Anne's not here to report for us on the Commission for Universal Access. I'm sure she will update us next month if she has anything. Public Library, oh dear, poor Miss Fittipaldi. Things are, I drove by there today and there was a Eyewitness News
Yes.
van parked in front. The library is
It was
the
there.
new hotbed of conversation.
And I have the good fortune of attending Monday night's meeting.
Good for you.
I'll be there to represent the school district. I told Ms. Fittipaldi to take a night off, and I'm sure I'll be involved in the discussions about recent events. But we haven't had a meeting since, so I'll report to the board Monday, after Monday.
Anybody know, I mean, I have just bare minimum information about what the brouhaha is about.
I know, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I
get
know,
your mic.
unfortunately, intimately, because my wife is on the library board of trustees. Someone.
I don't want to talk about it.
Let's. Yeah, we
I don't think
shouldn't. There's
it's a board of
a controversial proposal was somehow accepted by someone. No one knows who accepted the controversial proposal to talk, and the board of trustees is meeting with their attorney tomorrow night, and has postponed the controversial talk.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but that meeting should be quite interesting, Scott.
It's going to be fun, Scott.
Well, I mean, today there was a news van out front. So, I mean, this is
been
going to
all
go
week of
on
work.
all week. I mean, if it's already happening now and their board meeting isn't until next Monday, I think we can look forward to a full week's worth of this, if not longer. All right, well, good luck to our library board. Shared services, I have not received any communication from them in quite some time. No CPAC? No updates, okay. Monique, do you have anything for us from parents of students of color?
No, they have not met, and they're working out some dates for their next meeting.
Okay. Anne's not here for human relations. Michelle, any updates from the Board of Health?
Yes. So I went to the Board of Health meeting on the 9th of May, and we talked about the usual things that I had mentioned last time, but there were a few things that came up. The Board of Health would like to know if specific information about juuling is being taught in our middle school and high school curriculum to prevent the use of vaping instruments.
Actually, interestingly enough, on our tour of the high school on, what day was that now? Last week was a blur. Was that Thursday? As we were concluding our tours and coming back out the front, that was exactly the presentation that the high schoolers were getting. I think it was the ninth graders.
Yes, it was.
We're getting that presentation, and I'm sure Mr. Lassiter would be more than happy to share, how that information is being disseminated, what that curriculum is, but all those kids were in that auditorium, and I mean, this has been a conversation, I feel like, in multiple meetings that we've been in recently, like how really particularly diabolical this is, that some little implement has been created that, just looks like something you might stick in the side of your computer that lets you to smoke wherever you are with no smell,
Right.
It's diabolical. I mean,
So-
it is just meant for, teenage brains that think they can get away with everything and anything
Yeah.
to just try to get away with everything and anything.
So it's
diabolical.
important to the Board of Health. They certainly agree that is diabolical,
And
I
it is
think.
also
And-
important to, I think, our staff
Yes.
and our administrators, and certainly I know to everyone sitting around this table. So we share their concern, and maybe, Scott, you can figure out a way that we can funnel information to the Board of Health through Michelle about
I'll work with Michelle
what's
about
being
that.
done.
Yeah, so I do know for sure, since my kids got the information through Mr. Sclafani's class, that I was able to tell them that.
Right.
But we'll
It
be in
sounds like
touch.
there's something even larger
Sure is,
going
yeah.
on grade by grade as well. So
Well, I know that, being the head of the curriculum committee, I was able to give them a little bit of information, but not, comprehensive amounts. So we'll get in touch with that. But I also wanted to mention that in our magazine that the board receives, the National School Board's glossy, once a month, that there is a full, article about vaping and policies around vaping. That's right. So I think that I'll bring that to tomorrow's policy committee, and we can take a look at that. So I'll report that back to the Board of Health. They are still looking for volunteer reps from the middle school that will be rising 8th graders next year. And they need commitments, basically, by the second Thursday in June.
Have they reached out to Mrs. Osemiya yet?
They reached out to Ms. Asamoah as a go-between, but Ms. Asamoah didn't have middle school names necessarily. She had high school names. So I will be getting in touch as a go-between about that one as well. Ms. Asamoah, speaking of her, she wants to start a smoking cessation program in the high school, so to help students and others quit smoking. One of the student reps said, no, that's not something kids are interested in doing. They're not going to attend another class. So it seems like there probably, is some discussion to be had about whether or not that's worth doing, but that's something that is on the table, and Ms. Asamoah is willing to do it, which is great. But I guess we'll have to figure out what the interest is. Also, there's a building maintenance issue at Bartle that was brought up by the health inspector concerning the dishwasher that has been broken, and so there's a food safety issue that they are concerned about, because if the dishwasher is broken, that things need to be done by hand in a certain way, and they were concerned that those food safety precautions were not being met. So I wanted to follow up with them on that, so maybe we can talk about that, Scott, and see what the issue is.
I will check in with Ms. Hoefler on that too.
I always, after the Board of Health meetings, when I took my notes, I would send a quick email off to Scott and Linda, and stuff got done like within a day or two.
Okay.
So I would advise, that was very helpful, because I was in shock the first time I went to a Board of Health meeting, and they said the refrigerator is down at the whatever school, and I was like, ah.
Yeah, no, this is the first time.
I know, it happens from time to time.
Anybody who inspects our facilities, whether it be for the annual fire extinguisher re-up, always reaches out to Mike O'Donnell, but we'll verify that.
Something seems very, very strange that they would report that out there and not go directly to either the building administrator or to Linda.
Yeah.
Or something.
I think they do.
I
think they do both. What happens at the meetings is there's the health inspector has a report that lists every establishment, including the schools in the town, and it will list literally any violation at any level. Right. So this might be like level 0 out of level 5.
Right.
But the dishwasher broke last week, and they put it on the report, and the Board of Health tends to look at the schools and say, oh, the school, and thank goodness we have a school rep. I was, and now Michelle is, but I'm sure that I know that they're telling the people in the school. I know the food management people.
Right. Well, the reason that I brought it up was because they said they did bring it up and that they didn't get the response that they were expecting, or it wasn't quick enough. So I figured I'd just bring it back to you.
That's good.
If you could email me or call me with the details, specific details, I'd be happy to address it.
Okay.
I did not know about this before now.
Okay. Thank you. And there was one more thing. Every single meeting, there's one member who brings up the late start times and that concern with the issue of the start times not being late enough. So that was a topic of conversation. I was not prepared with all of the details, but Mark was good enough to send me all of the information that I need, that he has very often repeated. So we will have that conversation again. Our last meeting is June, and then there are no more Board of Health meetings for the summer. So.
All righty. Well, I hope everyone stays healthy over the summer.
I hope so,
Out
too.
the Board of Health. Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Anything for us from the Green Team?
Green Team meeting is in 2 weeks.
Okay.
They are approaching their deadline for their Sustainable Jersey Schools submissions. So this is the last meeting before they get those submissions out. There's a wonderful team across all the different schools working on these submissions, and I'll have a better update in 3 weeks.
Awesome.
I do want to add that June 5th, put it on your calendar. I believe Melanie McDermott sent an email out to the board that that's the high school tree planting ceremony. So we'll be receiving that generous grant and planting trees all over. That's June 5 at 3 o'clock on the high school lawn.
Thank you for that reminder. Mark, I assume same
Nothing.
goes for cable TV?
Zilch.
Okay, so for me, for delegate to the New Jersey School Boards Association, I briefly mentioned this at our last meeting. I don't know if anybody got a chance to look at the resolution. I'll just basically read the bottom line resolution language that delegates are going to be asked to vote on. It's somewhat of a no-brainer. We've talked about this more than a few times at the board level or at the board table about the reason that the district is getting the small amount of additional money that we are getting now from the state is both because of Governor Murphy's intention to supply more funding to districts, but also because of legislation that was passed late last year called S2 that kind of reconfigured the state funding, the School Funding Reform Act, otherwise known as SFRA, to the great joy of some districts and to the great consternation of others, because some districts started getting funding that they haven't been getting for the last decade, and other districts started getting funding taken away that they have been getting over the last decade. And every time that this happens in some way or another, that the formula is either not funded the way it's supposed to be, or the formula is reconfigured in some way, there are inevitably districts that put in resolutions to the delegate assembly trying to make it so that the state does not continue to cut away at districts' budgets. So this resolution came from one of these districts that is going under S2, can anticipate years worth of cuts that they have to somehow make up for. So the resolution language states the NJSBA believes in a fair, equitable, and adequate allotment of state aid based upon the most recent enrollment and financial data, including adjustments to ensure full funding under the statutory formula, but that no school district and no student should experience hardship as a result of reductions or other adjustments in state funding. The NJSBA further believes that the state school funding formula should address the financial needs of school districts in which exceptional circumstances involving the community's tax base prevent the calculation of a fair and accurate local contribution to the education program. Further, it is recommended that NJSBA School Finance Committee conduct a review of the School Funding Reform Act of 2008, particularly the data and methodology used to calculate a district's local share, and report the progress of the study along with any policy recommendations to the November 2019 Delegate Assembly. Personally, I have no qualms with any of that language. It is particularly frustrating that the state continues to take an approach of just kind of juggling the same relatively small pot of money between districts, where some will get taken from here and put over there and taken from over here and put over there, where really at this point just about no districts are being adequately funded, and ones that were previously adequately funded, they're now coming in. I think the district in this case is losing about 10% of their funding this year, and can anticipate similar cuts over the next 5 years. So we've talked about this multiple times about this being unsustainable. It is absolutely unsustainable, and some much bigger, better solutions need to be put forward. I wish I knew what those were, but I'm glad that a district has put forward the idea that school boards should really study this issue and come up with some recommendations for the state. So, anybody have any thoughts or questions about that?
I sure do.
Yes, ma'am.
This Thursday, Cory Booker's brother, who is the head of the department.
He is Governor Murphy's education policy advisor.
Thank you, policy advisor, sorry.
You're welcome.
It sounds like, anyway, this Thursday he will be giving an address down in Trenton, and I don't have the car that day, so I was asking Darcy in an email if she was willing to go, but I don't know if there's enough knitting in the world to prepare me for such a trip. But if anyone is willing or able, it might be interesting to go hear what they have to say.
I will say that having been to at least 3 of these New Jersey School Boards Association legislative days, not terribly useful. typically. And the last one that I attended, well, here, let's put it this way. 2 ones ago that I attended, I asked very pointed questions of Senate President Sweeney. He didn't like them very much. We kind of got into a little bit of a fight. And then the very next year, you weren't allowed to go up to the microphone and ask questions anymore. You had to submit them on a piece of paper.
You are no longer allowed to ask questions.
So
It's
there's
your
minimal.
fault.
You don't really get an opportunity to, like make a real point. It's more. So legislators get to come in. They give a little bit of a stump speech, and that's that. It's not really meant for solutions-oriented dialogue, unfortunately. So I think this year I will not be partaking of the show. And I think there are other ways that if we wanted to be heard on this issue that we could try, but this is particularly difficult. The state doesn't have the funds. I mean, so I don't. Again, there are solutions that are just a bit above my pay grade. I wish I knew what those state level solutions were, but I honestly don't. So I think a bunch are being put out there. I disagree with a lot of the ones that Senator Sweeney's putting out there in his Path to Progress. Unfortunately, I don't hear Governor Murphy coming out with a lot in response, so everything just kind of feels stuck. It just kind of feels stuck.
That's why I wanted to hear what Mr. Cary Booker had to say.
But Cary Booker doesn't have a lot to do with this. This is legislative.
I thought since he was the advisor that he would be.
The Department of Education isn't going to have a big impact here, unfortunately. Like when it comes to the state budget and the state's finances, that's where the problem is. That if they don't have the money to dole out to the districts to fund the School Funding Reform Act, the department can come up, just like we could sit here and we could come up with lists of things that we want all day long, things that we want to fund, things that are our priorities, things that we think are important. If the money's not there to fund them, we're just talking to the wall. So that's where the problem is. The problem is the state isn't generating, Scott has talked about this multiple times as we talked about this year's budget. Somehow, as a superintendent, Scott's got to think about revenues. Like, how do I make money? Like, that's not supposed to be a superintendent's job, to think of ways to make money. But if we don't want to be faced with even worse choices to make next year, that's what he knows he's got to do, because he's the guy who had to paste these numbers together from both ends. The lack of revenues and the increased expenditures. And the state's in the same position. And, Governor Christie gave a lot of great lip service to, all these big, bold changes he was going to make. And again, we've talked about this multiple times, about his 2% cap, how this 2% cap was, his 2% cap did absolutely nothing. What his 2% cap did was push the cost of educating the state's students down to local taxpayers. That's what it did. Because our expenditures don't change, cost of living goes up, insurance goes up, everything goes up. So now everybody's stuck. So I don't envy them. They've got some big, big problems to work out. And right now they've got some really angry districts, because they got millions of dollars cut out of their budget. And when we're upset about losing a program and staff, and rightly so, other districts are faced with losing 80, 120 entire buildings. So it's a problem. So I thought that attending this thing on Thursday and, asking some really good question to Cary Booker was going to move the needle somewhere, but it's just not. So I won't be going on Thursday, even though I do have the card.
I'm not really sad at all about not going.
Anyone, my inclination is to support this resolution. I will go, I will listen to arguments. It's interesting the way it usually happens. Delegates make arguments for, delegates make arguments against. I can't see what the arguments against this are, but, I'll go and I'll listen and I'll report back.
Thank you.
At our next meeting. All right. So, Rob, do you have anything for us from Middlesex County School Boards?
Yeah, following my very froggy voice on that 2 meetings ago, I was still sick on Wednesday night when the last meeting, so there's no next meeting announced yet.
Okay. All right, so that's it for our liaison reports. I don't have anything for my president's report tonight. I think I went on at y'all enough last time. Anybody have anything for old business?
I don't know if this is old business or new business, but I'm going to ask. There is an alternative to Naviance that came to my attention because I'm the mother of a senior. And it looks like Rutgers especially is a part of it, as well as hundreds of different colleges. It's free. And it's called the Coalition for College Access. So I just thought that you might have heard of it before. So I didn't know if it was old business or new business, but I guess it's new business.
Coalition for College Access?
The Coalition for College Access.
Do you have information on your computer you can email me?
I can, yes.
I can Google it otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, we could start at the beginning, but I thought that since Naviance is similar to other types of things going by the wayside as far as different schools go, the Coalition for College Access gives the same type of open access for sharing information to different colleges concerning students' records and applications.
So the Coalition for Access, it's the Coalition app, so that's more related to the Common app versus the Coalition app, more so than the Coalition app versus Naviance, since the thing about Naviance is that it's connected to the Common app, so that makes it easier for you to upload, for teachers to upload stuff on Naviance, and then it gets sent to the Common app, and then everything's connected, and it's all great. But I personally never used the Coalition app, but from what I've heard, it's just like an alternative to the Common app for some colleges that don't offer the Common app, or that the Coalition app, or they're only on the Coalition app, something like that. But I don't think that it's comparable to Naviance itself, but instead it's another alternative for students to use when dealing with college applications compared to the Common app.
Yeah, I mean, I generally think only a few students that I know actually use Coalition. It's most people that are applying to private schools just use the Common app because it covers a lot of different colleges. I'm not sure if Coalition covers all of the popular private schools that are in Common App.
I guess there's more research to be done. I just thought that if we could save a little bit of money, and it looks like most of the students that we have graduating are going into schools that are covered by this coalition, that perhaps it was something for us to take a look at.
Sounds like a separate thing, though, no? I mean, I don't know. I haven't done this yet, so it sounds like it's separate.
It's a separate, Naviance is actually separate, and it's a paid-for system. So, I mean, they are separate. They're linked as far as the schools that are available. I don't know if one is comprehensive and one is not. Looks like we have to look into it. Yeah,
that's the question. Because I got the sense that the coalition is not as comprehensive. It doesn't do all of the services that Naviance does.
Right.
So, but again, I don't know enough about it. But that's my impression. That really is just a different way of completing the Common App, but doesn't provide all the other resources that Naviance does.
Right. Yeah, I didn't do a cost-benefit analysis or anything like that, as you can tell. So, I don't know how much we spend on Naviance. I don't know the particulars. I know that there's a few people in the building that we rely on to use it as, experts. Anyway, I thought that might have been old business, but no.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else? Nope. Anything for new business?
Actually, yes. So there's a few different things. The NJSBA conference is offering a discounted rate if we register before June 30th. So I thought that if we could decide before then, we could pay a little less money and attend. Also, I was very disappointed to see such a lack of information sessions about TGNC policies in New Jersey. I thought our first policy presentation was really well received, but there didn't seem to be anyone else who, picked it up after we dropped it. So I'd like to see if we could pull that together for this coming October. And the next thing I wanted to bring up was something that came across my social media, and it's a free workbook that you can download, and it's similar to Undoing Racism, but you do it on your own time. It's actually like a personal journal that you work on. It's called the, oh gosh, let me look it up here. Sorry. It's the White Supremacy Workbook. It's called White Supremacy and Me. And yeah,
quite a title.
It is.
You don't want to be seen with that, though, do you?
You actually do want to be seen with that because
I want to be
it's a workbook. So it is not, it is not.
The title is a little, there's a bit of a double entendre there.
I guess
that's,
so.
like, difficult.
It's written by a woman named Layla Saeed, and the cover is Me and White Supremacy Workbook. So I guess, yes, it could be read differently than it's meant, but it's a free personal anti-racism tool for people holding white privilege to begin to examine and dismantle their complicity in the oppressive system of white supremacy. I know we talk about this a lot. We talk about undoing racism costing us many dollars. We talk about bringing in professional development type things, difficult conversations. This is a personal, reflective type journal that you can download for free, and it's written by a woman who works in the field. She's also an artist. She's a poet, and you can read about her in particular. Her last name is Saad. Her first name is Layla, Layla. And I downloaded it myself, so I plan on doing it. I wouldn't recommend it if I wasn't going to do it myself. But I think that it's a free first step, perhaps. So I thought, if we all want to take a look at it, we could disseminate it amongst friends and family and get to work.
How about Equity and Excellence? Take a look at it.
Okay, good idea.
Okay.
I just pulled up the website, so.
Okay.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, so if you guys take a look at it, and then you can report back to us. Okay, anything else?
I just had a thing. So last year I remember our ranking for high school was number 17 in the state, but this year it dropped to 59. And I was looking through the U.S. News page. I noticed that our math literacy rate is 30%. That seems pretty alarming to me. That about only 30% of our students are on a proficient level compared to like regular standardized standards. So is there anything that we can do to help this, or is there a reason that's causing it that we could fix our 30% math literacy rate?
Well, it could be a number of things, but it's a loaded question to ask, so I have to follow up with you if you'd like personally provide you more information. But I can tell you our participation rates continue to hover around the 85 to 90% range. So I question what the validity, I always question the validity and reliability of the data to begin with, let alone the fact that 10% likely of our highest achievers aren't even taking the test. So that's a start. But if you'd like a more detailed breakdown, maybe we can connect and I can go over it with you. I do often ask you to reach out to me by email, and I don't know if we've had a chance to really sit and talk about numbers of issues, but before you leave, you should invite me to the high school at some point, and I'll meet with you during lunch like I do with many students who have questions like that.
Is that just based on park data? Is that what?
I'm sorry?
They're pulling it just from park data? Is that
Correct.
where they take it from? Right,
I think it's really important with these different things that are ranking students and ranking schools that you take a look at the metrics that they use, the data that's used to, rate them. Sometimes it really is not worth getting any kind of emotional over it because the rankings are made up of such weak metrics.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Okay, if no one else has anything, else for new business, this is our final public comment period. So if anybody would like to make public comment, now's the time.
So I came here tonight.
Just make sure you use the mic thing.
I came here tonight not so much to fight for my job because I fully expected you guys to vote the way that you did, as it was told by Scott that the board rarely votes against his recommendation. I sent you all a letter earlier, again, not to fight for my job, because to be honest with you, at this point, it's 12 years of my life, and probably the last 6 of them, I've been fighting tooth and nail for myself and for my son. So I've chosen to take this opportunity with the 8 people that are here, and the rest of the people that are going to see it whenever they want to see it, that I'm going to read the letter that I wrote, because I feel that it's important that people understand. I chose not to resign, because why am I resigning from a job that I've been at for 12 years? Even it was given as an option to me, because I'm being let go due to behavior. So with that said, I'm just going to read this and call it a night. Good afternoon, my name is Diana Brooks. I've worked in this district for 12 years. I'm also a resident and have my own special needs child in the 3rd grade. I'm writing this letter in reference to my contract not being renewed for employment next year. Dr. Taylor and Mrs. Boudin met with me and my union rep on Thursday, May 2nd at 1:50. It was in this meeting that I was told by Dr. Taylor that he felt, and I quote, "it was time we parted ways." When asked for his reasoning, the only thing he said was, "it's due to behavior." I was given the option to resign if I chose. However, I will not resign from a position that I've held for 12 years for no reasonable cause. During the past 12 years, I've attended 2 graduate programs and now hold 3 teaching certifications. I've held these since 2014. I'm constantly reading and attending workshops on my own time in order to better myself for my own child as well as my students. I've pulled all of my evaluations from the past 12 years as well, which all show my abilities to work with the students of Highland Park, many of which the parents are sitting right up here. 2 years ago, I was put in a sling after tearing something in my shoulder while working with a physically aggressive child. I was still placed back in the same classroom the very next day to be put in the same position with this student in the hallway. This child was physically attacking me while Mr. Benjamin casually walked by, texting on his phone, offering no help at all. That afternoon, I was back at the doctor's office with a burst bursa in my knee. The next day, I was still placed back in that same classroom. Administration claimed they had no idea that I was injured and needed to be moved. This was exposed as a lie in email conversations, and the very next day, I was in a new classroom. Even with this happening, I never once complained about what was happening to me. I've been transferred to different buildings throughout my career and never said a word. Now, 12 years later, I'm sitting here asking you, as the Board of Education, to at least question why it's happening. My evaluations have been positive, and yet the reason for non-contract renewal was behavior. I'm a very upfront and honest person. I will not pretend that I'm a perfect person. I was written up by Susie Boudin in February for cursing and using inappropriate language while in a meeting between her and myself, discussing the terms of my personal 504 plan. Up until that point, my 504 plan had not been reviewed in over 2 years. It took my partner, sitting over there, to say something to Scott Taylor the day before that all of a sudden I was being called to schedule my 504 plan review meeting. While at this meeting, I was asked to specify certain terms of my plan. I was told no to the first few things I mentioned. I was told it would interrupt the educational process. Everything I required was being shut down. Now I'm going to get real honest. My 504 plan is due to me being diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, attachment disorder, and PTSD. As I was sitting in the room listening to my supervisor, the director of special education, tell me no to every tool that I have asked to have in my bag due to severe panic attacks, I began to feel anxious. My anxiety kept going up until I could no longer hold it in. I fully admit to using colorful language as I explain my frustration with this district and the special education policies. My personal frustrations turn to how the district is failing my autistic son as well. I take full responsibility for what I said, and I'm not using my mental illnesses as an excuse for my actions that day. However, I do want everyone to understand the reasoning as to why it had happened. Mrs. Boudin wrote me up saying that even though it was a closed meeting about my personal 504 plan, I was still representing the district. I did not fight the write-up. I signed the paper with my union rep present and moved on from the situation. A week after that, we met again. This time, it was Mrs. Boudin, my building principal, my union rep, and myself. This meeting went very smoothly, and everything I had asked for in the previous meeting with Mrs. Boudin was now being accepted and written into my 504 plan. Now, 3 months later, I'm being let go due to my, quote, behavior. That write-up is the only black mark against my behavior as an employee. That write-up was due to being put in a situation that caused my mental illness to rise, and therefore could not control that I had gotten so upset. Again, I'm not condoning what I said. I am simply providing the reasoning behind my behavior that day to something that I was unable to control due to my mental illness. If Dr. Taylor would like to let me go after 12 years of working phenomenally with various special education students due to my behavior, then he's letting me go because of a mental illness that I have that falls under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which allows me to have my 504 in the first place. I do use my right to advocate for my son, who is enrolled in the special education program in this district. My advocating for my son and taking the district to court on behalf of my son has no bearing on my ability or behavior as an educator and employee of this district. I am by no means asking for special treatment. I am openly and honestly asking for fair treatment. Thank you for your time. I read this not to get my job back, to be honest with you. We were leaving this district in the next year anyway, which I've made quite clear many times. I want my son in a district that respects all special ed kids and doesn't just talk the talk, but they actually walk the walk. So thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry that you all feel the need to vote against me, but I feel that it might be a blessing in disguise that me and my family, who is on volunteer fire department, who is a chief of the volunteer fire department, who we've both worked our butts off for this district and this town, are moving on and taking our lives somewhere else where we can be treated as respectful adults and community members.
Thank you.
Did you steal the pen? My name is Peggy Brooks. I reside at 16 Amherst Street. I've been a member of this community since 2001. Actually, before that, since I've been 23 years old, and I'm 50 years old. I've lived here for 27 years. The changes in this community disgust me. The changes in this school district disgust me. And I'm going to be very grateful to leave this community. I want each and every one of you board members to think about what direction you're sending children who are our next generation, how you're treating these teachers and these paras. The stories I've heard for 12 years disgust me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to make it very clear that the board is not allowed by law to discuss personnel matters in public. So I just want to make that clear. Is there any other public comment this evening? No? Okay. Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everyone.